Shut up.
Good morning. Welcome back to Boston Black News. We're here in Common Square, and we're just really excited about what happened in the election. Folks came out and vote in numbers, high numbers. I don't know if it was record turnout numbers, but maybe they were record turnout numbers. There were record turnout numbers. But I know Dunk the Vote was out there in Common Square, Milton. We were all over the place with Boston Black News, Boston Praise Radio and TV, and Milton Access Super Tuesday broadcast. And we were on the ground, and we were handing out information. Mass vote and NAACP information. We handed it out. And I just want to let folks know there is some more information that we want to talk to you about. The census completed online, my2020census.gov, or by phone, 1-844-330-2020. And of course, we want you to register to vote. If you have not registered to vote, you was not able to vote in the September primary, which was September 1st, but you can register to vote now. You can visit us at registertovotema.com. And the general election, there's early voting. I want you to take notes of this now. It's very important. Early voting, October 17th to October 30th, and the election day is November 3rd. So make sure you get your information out. We have to get him out, whatever that him means. It ain't just one person. They get him out. That's how we are promoting Dunk the Vote this year. And folks are interested in doing that so that we can make this place more equitable for black people. So in the studio we have Ed Gasken, who's the executive director of the Greater Grove Hall Main Street. He's been doing a lot of work, and he knows how to raise a lot of money. That's right. This guy raises a lot of money. He just creeps around the community. He does a lot of work. I see him everywhere. I was on a campaign, a senatorial campaign, U.S. Senate campaign. He was at a meeting way out somewhere. I can't even remember. But I always see him in places, high places with a lot of money. Welcome to Black Newsman. How you doing, man?
I don't know after that setup.
We just move a little closer to the microphone, because I want folks to hear you.
I'm trying to get away from you now. I'm going to get the wrong idea.
No, it's just so good to see you, man. And you know, I know you've been doing a lot of work, and pardon me for being a little bit aggressive as far as getting resources. You know, we're trying to raise some money, $1 million for the Boston Black News. We have a studio over there that's ready to be renovated. Boston Praise Radio and TV, 31 media outlets. I know you have access, and you're on a lot of these different boards. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but we can have a conversation about really helping our people.
How much money are you guys trying to raise?
$1 million. I feel disappointed because the CEO over there is sitting there, and I went out and had to go get the civic engagement, you know, get that up, the numbers in our community, because that's important, political clout. And I had a goal with our team of broadcasts, 25 broadcasts, to raise $1 million before I was supposed to hit the ground in August 1st. I'm a little bit behind. Here we are now, September 4th, I believe, and we have not scratched the $50,000 mark. In kind, we've scratched probably like $200,000 as far as in kind volunteerism time, the number of hours people putting in for free. I just want to throw that out there, but that counts as, you know, the in-kind as far as the budget. But we need $1 million, and we've been asking the young people, our listeners and viewers out there. We thank you so much for those who've given. I remember there was one a session we had, a Zoom meeting. I had challenged folks just to give $1,000, because I gave $1,000, right? And they gave $1,000. The people started giving. We had the momentum going, but we haven't reached the goal. We have some possibilities out there, but with your help, we believe that we can meet that goal.
I see.
Okay.
So, just curious. So, what foundations did you approach?
We are approaching Cummings Foundation, and I understand that you're on the board now. So so that's just one of them. And then we've actually.
I'm on the grant committee.
Oh, that's even better. So you make the actual decisions?
Well, there's a lot of people that make decisions.
So you make the recommendations?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, that's all right. We'll have a conversation after that. But then we may have some conversations with the new Commonwealth Fund, you know, the black executive, the corporate community. And I know you're taking notes too. I haven't hit them up yet. But You're good. And then we also, BECMA has made a commitment to donate, and we expect some money from them. And there's been a lot of individual donors, man. I mean, it's been really good and exciting. And, I don't want to put you on the spot because I want to hear what's going on in the Grove Hall. And because you're doing great work there, and I know we've had conversations about that. Because we're going to talk about money. It's okay to talk about money, right?
But I think from what you've said so far, I think the issue is going to be as people are trying to address the issues around equity and inclusion,
right?
Then from a larger framework, do they see the station as part of an equity and inclusion strategy?
Yes.
And so right now, you talk about black-owned media, there really isn't a lot of equity and inclusion in media. So anybody that wants to truly advance that agenda should see what you're doing as part of that.
Well, I'm not the CEO, but I think I'm doing a little bit, and then you kind of corrected the terminology. As far as the equity and...
In other words, I'm saying you can get so much money from listeners and citizens
right,
like that.
Right.
But obviously...
We need some hard, like some real major...
Well, if you want, somebody could write you a check for $1 million. That's not that much money.
Right.
So,
I knew I had the right person on the show. Go ahead, man.
No, what I'm just trying to say, though,
yes.
But it's at a much higher level, right?
Okay.
So... I don't know, I'm just making this up. I don't know if a CBS or a Comcast says, as part of our equity and inclusion strategy, what we want to do is make a contribution to this organization because this isn't the thing that makes financial sense for us to do in terms of reporting, but it might make sense for us in terms of what we want to do to give back to the larger community.
Okay, good. I'm going to unpack that because there was a lot of said in that, and I think we'll use a lot of time for me to digest all that. So I think you and I have to have a meeting so you can kind of explain that to me. Why don't you talk about Grove Hall? Because you just said a whole lot, and I'm sitting there like, okay, I know you're the MIT guy. The Sloan, what's that? You got that award, that big award over there at MIT.
That is true.
What was that award called again?
It was called the Martin Trust Fellow.
And what's that mean?
So, in Sloan, obviously if it's MIT, you have a lot of people who are PhDs,
right.
They have all kinds of advanced degrees. So for them getting all A's is no big deal because they've got all A's their whole life.
Right.
So now how do you differentiate your top students one from another? So what they did is they created another award that says among the best of the best.
All right now.
We want you to be nominated by your classmates, basically, so that we know that you're not a jerk.
Right.
You have to have the grades, and then we're going to interview you, and you're going to write an essay, and then we're going to make a decision as who are the 10 top students in the school. And so that was me.
Congratulations. You're a smart man. You're really smart.
Oh, stop.
That is like incredible.
Well, see, people said if I was really smart, I'd be on Wall Street. I wouldn't be in Grove Hall.
Because you have a commitment.
There's a difference between being on Crawford Street and Warren Street and being on Main Street.
We appreciate you being in the community because there's brothers like me. We're going to get that knowledge from you, and we're going to help our community because it's important that you give back, and that's what you're doing. So thank you very much for doing that. We're going to open the lines up. 617-282-0685. We want you to talk more about what's going on in Grove Hall and what some of the projects that's going on and how we can work together so that we can have equity in Boston Black News.
So let me just explain to your listeners a couple of things, our viewers. So the Main Streets program, there's 20 of them in the city, and they originally were started in Menino. And the program was originally started to revitalize the main streets in small Midwest and Western towns to keep them from becoming ghost towns. Menino said, well, I could use some of that money to try to revitalize some neighborhoods. And so he started with his own neighborhood.
Hyde Park?
Yeah, so that's where he started. But right now they go all the way from East Boston out at the airport all the way up to West Roxbury.
I know they have one in Mission Hill.
Yes, so the idea is that each neighborhood is different, and so each one of us operates as a separate 501c3, and so the neighborhood is different, the executive directors are different, and the boards are different. And so because of that, they all have very different kinds of agendas, even though they're the same part of a program. So this summer, one of the things that I was really able to advance was this environmental justice project. And what I noticed is I had this idea for creating a green zone, and I was able to have some research done to find out how many of these green zones were around the country.
Right.
So if you wanted to bring one to Grove Hall. Now, what you may not have known, I certainly didn't know until I saw the data, that the Grove Hall is only about 3% of the city's land mass, but has 40% of the city's brownfields.
Interesting.
It also has a disproportionate of the amount of the city's lead contamination in the soil, a higher asthma rates, basically from some of the respiratory stuff, carbon monoxide poisoning, and I mean the list just goes on from all the environmental stuff. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is, now that we have the some of the supporting information, is try to advocate to basically improvements. What kind of improvements could we make for the city based on that? So that's why it's an environmental justice project in the short term, but in the long term, Grove Hall is anywhere from 100 to 200 feet above sea level. So anybody that believes in rising sea levels and climate change, all the investments that let's say you made in a seaport district will all be underwater.
Right.
And so those people will have to move someplace, and they're all going to have to move to Grove Hall. And so if they don't do something about the environmental issues now, when they get there, they're just going to find this polluted area with a lot of black people. And so there really is no place for them to go. They have to come in that direction. And so it makes sense to start making the investments, or whether it's soil reclamation and things like that, today, so that we actually have a place in the future.
That's interesting. Wow. That's a lot, man. I told you, real smart, man. That's good. So what about the businesses in Grove Hall? I mean, that's part of the Main Streets Initiative, right? Is that how does that work?
So
I'm not sure, because I know it's like a part of the mayor's program. I mean, do they give you money? How does that
what
work?
happens is So we're primarily focused on improving the businesses in the area, and that's two things: either new signage, which is what's called the Restore program. So sometimes you'll see a business get a new sign, and providing different types of technical assistance.
Right.
So during the COVID thing, I actually found it was almost to me like a real live experiment, because what I noticed. And you're going to put this together. You're going to connect the dots. What I noticed is when the travel industry was hit, no more people were flying, people weren't staying in hotels. Didn't affect us because we didn't have a lot of tourists in Grove Hall. Right. When the entertainment thing and the sports, those guys shut down. Didn't affect us either. Right. All my same businesses were just doing business as usual. Right. And the same thing, colleges, when the colleges were shut down, because a lot of the schools have so many, a lot of towns, like let's say like Alston, Brighton, Cambridge, they have so many college students who patronize their businesses. That didn't affect us either. Right. So what you began to realize is that we were basically totally disconnected from the city at large. Right. So all that stuff we talk about, in other words, we weren't doing large government contracts and sort of procurement. We weren't involved in construction.
So we were half of a percent.
We weren't basically involved with any of the city. Anyway. So our barbershops, people kept cutting hair, beauty salons, nail salons, bodegas, convenience stores, all the nonprofits, all the churches. We just kept doing
because we've been living in a pandemic anyway.
Hello.
Come on.
So the point was that what was happening around us wasn't even affecting us. Right. And so I was like, wow. So it wasn't until the governor said, you have to shut down all these things that it affected us. And so for me, that's when I had to jump into action. That's when I had to try to find money, which I was able to find different grant programs for my businesses. That's good. Even though they were small, they were like $1,000. For some people, that made a real difference. I'd say, there's a number of different things. So I was trying to grab all the resources I could get, and then all the other PPE stuff, the face shields, the masks, food programs. I was just down there yesterday where we have a program. We had 9 pallets of food that we were giving out. So just all different kinds of programs. So
you was in Grove Hall, Main Streets was doing all this.
So what happened is in that particular, the last one I just mentioned, so the chair of our board, Karen Bunch, she was the one that was heading the COVID response. So all the food stuff, that's how we got the testing at Prince Hall on Mondays and Thursdays. Right. So Whittier Street does it on Mondays, Harvard Street does it on Thursdays. But yeah, pulling all this stuff together to try to make these resources available for the people in our community, we were behind that.
Right. And the demographics, because there's a lot of Latino businesses in Grove Hall, Main Street.
So it is. So that's been another one of my issues. Yeah. So I've been, so maybe as many as 40% of the businesses are Dominican. Okay. And so a couple different things. One is just from a census tract data, Grove Hall is one of the poorest sections in the city of Boston. and it's also one of the most diverse areas. But one of the things I've been trying to fight for or work on, whatever, for the last few years is the issue around language access.
Okay.
So the issue is like when a lot of these grants are stemming down from the federal, city, and state level, they were only in English.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, but I represent a district that has all these businesses where English isn't necessarily their first language. How do they apply? How do they get access? So even when they thought they were doing a good job and they would put the application in Spanish, let's say,
right,
I would say, well, how do I get it to them? Because if I write an email in English and you're a Spanish-speaking person,
right,
you're not going to read an email that's in English and think that there's an attachment in Spanish, or that you're going to try to read the English directions to go to a Spanish website. So I worked on, A, I tried to get them to change that, and B, I then tried to work on getting my own stuff translated to work on access and equity. And at the federal level, it was even worse. So if you remember when the federal government had the SBA PPP program,
right,
they were trying to give away all these grants and things like that. Well, they didn't have any of the technical assistance, at least at first, in any of the other languages but English.
Right.
And so I was trying to overcome some of these hurdles to make it possible for some of my other businesses to get access to that. In fact, I testified at one of the hearings that Julia did.
Mahia.
Yep, I did, to just talk about
Has
this.
she been helpful?
Well, you don't necessarily work with the actual counselors. Usually you work with somebody on their staff.
Okay.
But I have worked with all my state reps. So in my case, I have China Tyler, I have Liz Miranda, I have Liz Malia, I have Senator Sonia
Chang Diaz.
I got her, and then on the city.
When you say you got her, are they helping you? Because see,
so the issue for me is I can't wait for them to come to me. I have to go to them and say, this is what I need on this, and this.
And have you done that?
I have done that.
And has it been a good response? Because election year is coming up, and I'm serious. I'm gonna keep it real with you. If these folks are not helping the black community, they're gonna be voted out. And that's the bottom line. So I want to know, if they're not helping, you need to let us know at Boston Black News today, right now, because I want to make sure I help Grove Hall. I see you out there doing the work. I see you helping our community, and it needs to be recognized and supported by the city councils, the mayor, the state senators, the governor. All the things that you're doing needs to be supported.
Yeah, see, I look at city government as a follower, not a leader. Mm-hmm. They just react to stuff that's brought to their attention.
Right.
For example, here's a classic example, right? When the mayor was doing his Imagine Boston 2030,
right,
and they were talking about how they wanted to have the most connected city and entrepreneurship and sea level,
right,
I said, there's nothing here about the people. There's nothing here about diversity.
Come on.
Now, listen to this. So I wrote this very nice letter and explained. I said, you've done a few good things. We need to build on that and make that part of our strategic plan to say that this is just as important as these other things in the city. I took it, hand-delivered it to the mayor, gave it to his chief of staff. They told me go talk to their Imagination 2030 people. They said, there's no need for that. They said, diversity and inclusion is part of everything we do. And I said, if you don't make it a stated goal, then we don't have any way to measure whether there's any progress. There's no way to get budget for it to achieve the particular goal. So by just saying it's part of everything we do, basically they just sort of blew it aside. So now when you have stuff like what's happening now and it all blows up and they're scrambling around trying to look for direction. So my point is, even when you're bringing stuff to them, they don't necessarily follow or listen.
Yeah.
A few executive orders here and there, and then they go about their business.
Wow. That's going to change. 617-282-0685. We're sitting in the studio with Ed Gaskins, the executive director of Greater Grove Hall, Main Streets. He's telling us about what's going on in the community. Please tune in www.bostonpraiseradiotv.co. We're everywhere. This is a serious conversation. I want you to hear from you, our listeners, our viewers out there. We want to make sure that Grove Hall reigns. We need to make sure that black people, Grove Hall, Latino people that live in the Grove Hall area, that they get the best of Boston. There was something else that you was talking about, the advancement
manufacturing. Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So what happened there was and again, typically there's like maybe a misperception of what happens with manufacturing. So we're not talking about automobiles, steel, tire, rubber.
Right.
We're talking about advanced manufacturing, where you're making these high value added products, and you don't have to have a lot of space to do that.
Right.
And so as a state, so let's say from a Governor Baker standpoint on down, they've decided that this is a strategically important, and they've invested a lot of money in it, and they've got a lot of federal money. One of the programs was like $200 million.
Right.
But when you look across the state to see where the advanced manufacturing programs are, you would be shocked to see that there's not a single one in Boston, nor is there one in Brockton, because it was thought that it was supposed to be someplace else. So recently what I was trying to do was advocate to have an advanced manufacturing program at the Burke High School.
Wow.
And so I was trying to get maybe $1 million and a half to do this program, and that was and in that particular case, my not even my legislator, because it was Nikia who actually had organized it. So I had I didn't even know that the state of Massachusetts.
Your legislator,
yes.
Nika.
Yes.
Nika Elguado.
Yes.
Okay, Elguado.
So she said, Ed, I've heard about this, and I think
she's Siri's sister. Okay.
So she said, I'm going to work with you on this.
She is the real deal.
So what happened we got together, and so I didn't even know there was an advanced manufacturing caucus in the state. So would realize everybody else around the state already knew this. What I found fascinating, when you talk about us being last to the party.
Come on.
These guys not only had they had the program for years,
right.
Once they saw that like the people were getting laid off from the restaurant industry and stuff like that, they were putting their people in their advanced manufacturing programs because they had already been running. I had the one woman who was talking about they had the fishermen from Gloucester.
Right.
Because remember, these jobs pay about $70,000 a year. You don't need any college education. You can graduate from high school and get into these programs.
Right.
So you start above minimum wage, but you ramp up, and so there's no union, there's nothing like that. So the thing is that you get it. So these guys already knew this was an opportunity, and they had already got their people into the program
already before.
And we didn't even have a program.
See, this is why it's so important we have Boston Black News. I mean, we are able to get the information. When you have information, get it to us. We ask people to get us your information so we can disseminate it out, so that we can help each other, help ourselves, help one another, so that we don't continue to be worth $8, get 0.5% of business contract. Let's talk about that, Ed. How does that happen?
Well, I have to say, so unfortunately,
0.5%.
So unfortunately, Ron, I'm so old now that I've seen all these affirmative action procurement.
We're gonna get you some dye. We're gonna get you some dye for your hair, man. Because you don't say you old. You all right. You are seasoned.
I see.
Because you gonna help us raise this money. Don't talk about no old. You gonna help us raise this money.
So the thing is that I've seen these programs come and go. They never end up moving the dial. And in fact, one day I was so discouraged because I said it looks like they've blocked every avenue of success for us.
Yeah.
I said, so you hear about federal, state, and local procurement from the federal government and how people did this.
Yeah.
So my issue there, for example, for me, the definitive case study was the Central Artery and Third Harbor Tunnel.
Right.
So here's a project that I don't know how many billion it was supposed to be, 3 or 4, ends up being like $20 billion by the time all is said and done.
Right.
So as a result of that, if there was really minority set-asides or quotas or inclusion, there should be several hundred new black millionaires working on those projects. In other words, if you realize how much money $1 billion is,
come on, let's talk billions.
And we were talking 10%. So my challenge is, name me one new black millionaire after a $20 billion project. So my point is, so I'm like, we aren't making any progress. They're not going to let us make any progress. So the Seaport District was $18 billion build out. Yeah. Where were all those blacks in the unions? All those people who went to the trades, the vocational.
Come on.
They should be building all these skyscrapers.
And you don't see none of them.
Don't see none of them.
Not one. So I walk around. See, you in the same place as I am. And I always look and see if there's any black people. And when I don't see any black people, I say, here we go again.
So my point is, I began to say, it's not like Boston jobs for Boston residents, living wage, $15 minimum.
Does not apply.
I said that's not happening for us.
It's
procurement from the city isn't happening.
Yeah.
Procurement on the private sector isn't happening.
Right.
So I'm like, they seem like they do not want us to have any avenue of progress whatsoever.
They just want us just to disappear. We're not going anywhere.
So here's where I was trying to do something else.
Okay.
as you may or may not have known, the last couple of years I was working on this event focusing on black founders of technology companies.
Right.
And we as a state may have less than 100 of them.
Right.
And so we basically we're not really represented in technology at all.
Right.
We're not really represented in terms of founders. We're not represented in terms of getting venture capital money. So my frustration was, okay, we didn't get the jobs of the past, construction, and all, but you guys aren't even making it possible for us to get the jobs of the future.
Right.
So that was one of my things I was trying to work on next. Like, how do I help have more blacks who have ideas be able to found technology companies where there's wealth creation opportunities in terms of your own stock, you get bought out, et cetera, but we're not represented there either. And there's really, in this particular area, there's really not a lot of initiative to actually help make that happen.
Right. There was one third one that you had mentioned. The third item, black something.
Well, I talked about the technology.
You talked about
the advanced manufacturing. I talked about
environmental justice. Now let's talk about where do we go from here? How do we change things? I mean, you're doing all this work. We have a news outlet here, 31 Media, a media platform for Boston Praise Radio and TV. We have Boston Black News. Although there may be some challenges, as you mentioned, but we're on the move and it's going to happen regardless. How do we change these daunting statistics as a community? I know voting is part of it. And that's my lane, and all those that want to be a part of that, fine, just go ahead and do that, and we're doing okay, and we're going to hope we do better. How do we start to chip away where there are resources that there's black owned? Let's not just talk about Black Lives Matter. Black folks always mattered. You know, at least
for another 2 weeks.
You know what I mean? Right. So my thing is like, how do we chip away? How do we? In your knowledge of Sloan Business School and, getting that award, smartest guy in the class and smartest man. No, seriously, what are these action steps? Give us some action steps so we can start to change the direction of our conversation and our actions.
So, I mean, again, I've just tried to be very targeted. I think and all of the above strategy is necessary, right?
Right.
So, blacks need to support black businesses. So,
right.
So that, in other words, it's nothing that we've learned in the past is wrong. We're going to have to do all of that and then some.
Right.
And so that's why. So whether it's let's press the city, state, and federal level for doing more procurement. Let's press the private sector for doing more procurement. Like all those kind of things that I had mentioned earlier. But I think somebody has to say, like, this is the strategy going forward.
Right.
I like, for instance, like Ujima's impact investing stuff.
Who?
Ujima, the cooperative. They invest in black businesses. Maybe you should have Nia Evans on. Let her talk about that. But I support that. I think that's a great project. So what I've tried to do is look at all the ways that we can advance and try to figure out where I can be supportive and where I can help.
Right.
And that's another example.
When you look at the Fortune 500 businesses, from my understanding, there are only 4 CEOs, black CEOs, out of 500.
Well, that's an improvement.
How much? What was that? I know I'm a little. You're a little older than me, I believe, right? And I mean 4.
Like I said, that.
So you got 4 CEOs out of the Fortune 500 in Boston. Let's talk Boston. $8 family net worth compared to 247,000. I'm so tired of hearing it, makes me sick to my stomach. And then you have a half of 0.5% of businesses for
but just take the last thing, for instance, on the corporate side.
Yeah.
So what I've said, the only people that seem to be getting that you usually refer to as a CXO title, in other words, CTO, CEO, CFO, CMO.
Right.
I said the only people that they seem to be hiring are diversity officers.
Right. See.
So I know lots of people who are people of color who are the chief diversity officer someplace. I don't see it going beyond that.
Right.
Again, it's like another. And the same thing. So whether I was talking about in corporations, I was talking about healthcare, or I'm talking about black managing partners of law firms. It's across the board.
Right. Okay. Eric, you had a comment that you wanted to make. You had showed me something about billionaires, 18 billionaires.
Yeah, in Massachusetts, it's stated that there's 18 billionaires in Massachusetts, and Robert Kraft is the third richest guy in Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay.
He's a nice guy.
Has he helped? There was a tribute.
I actually
last night. There was actually when I was talking to you, I think I was watching that too. That the Courtney twins, the brothers who play on the Patriots,
yes,
and some of the other Patriots were receiving an award, and the craft they were talking about, that they had, arranged a deal with Baker for the PPP gear. Baker was crying on the air, and all that, and I but anyway, I don't know, but I'm just wondering where did all this money go, because I didn't see it in like Grove Hall. I mean, I didn't see it in like Roxbury, Mission Hill, Dorchester, Mattapan. Like all this. No, I'm serious. I see it.
So here's what I would say. So, not trying to name drop it, but I've had breakfast with Bob Kraft before.
Okay.
And so,
I told you in high places.
So here's my point is, people like that.
Right.
So he could say, you know what?
Boom! Let's go ahead and write a check to Boston Black News.
No, but he could.
Yeah, of course.
But what he could do is he could say.
And if you're listening out there, Bob Kraft, we could use that $1 million check so I can make my job a little bit easier here. Because Pastor Walt is looking at me like, when are you going to raise that money?
But in other words, you think of stuff like that, right? So how many African Americans in the New England area are Patriots fans, support Patriots, watch Patriots on TV, go to Patriots games? So what's the mechanism for giving back to the community? Now they might say, his son Josh Kraft has the boys club or whatever. So they would probably
and he also has the Pop Warner. My son played in it in Brookline, nice field and all that in the real uniforms. Y'all see my uniform today.
But I'm
wearing this one. I just want to show our listeners and our viewers. Yeah, I'm wearing this. I'm wearing this today. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but I'm saying is, so that's an example. So on one hand, you could have the philanthropic giving and supporting the community, but you could also have procurement.
Okay.
So he has to buy a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So for instance, like one time when I was working with a different organization, I said just the people that clean the stands.
Right.
So for instance, like at that time they had the cans that you get the 5-cent deposit for.
Yeah.
They just threw that stuff out. They didn't want to be bothered with it.
So they don't even have return bottles?
No, listen. So I'm just saying. Okay. I said we could not only get a contract to clean the stands after the games, but we could then take the cans and get them recycled. But my point is that it's now a job and a source of revenue as opposed to a one-time grant in philanthropy.
I got
so I say when you are head of an organization that's that large, because it's not just the Patriots are just part of one thing, right? So he has the Patriots, he has the Revolution, and not just the Fox, but he also has all that real estate. That's all. That real estate is all his. So I'm just saying, so all the jobs and stuff. Now, what he would say is, hey, I'm employing 3,000 people out here.
Right.
But where are the procurement opportunities? Where are the other opportunities for business and doing business? So like you said, we're just not trying to get a check in one way, shape, or form.
Oh, I'm not. We're getting it. No, we're gonna get a check and some. Don't cut the check off. We got to get that check because that's sometimes we've been waiting a long time. We want the check. We want equity, economic opportunity. We want real estate. We want all of the above. But don't cut the check. The check got to be a part of that equation.
Did you know there's a very unique aspect to Gillette Stadium that all the concession stands are run by nonprofits?
I did not know that.
I didn't know it.
Yeah, except for the beer stands, but the concessions are run by nonprofits, and they get a percentage of the bring-ins.
That's awesome. That's good to know. That's good. Well, how do we get a non? Okay, can you look into that? Okay, let's do that because I think we got to have all kind of ways and strategies to make sure that this happen. I'm so excited that you're here with us this morning. Not to put you on the spot with your intelligence and your brilliance and your knowledge and your connections,
before
right?
Before you go any further, let me just mention this other project.
Okay, go ahead. Tell you about the other project. Go ahead.
Well, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I feel sometimes the current city administration is a little tone deaf.
Okay.
So we had our banners in Grove Hall,
right,
on the street poles,
mm-hmm.
and whether it was by mistake or by intention, the city threw them all out.
Right.
So then we were trying to get them replaced.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talked to people, we didn't want to just put up what we had. We had this new idea
mm-hmm.
that people really loved. We were going to basically feature 100 black women leaders of Boston,
right,
from Phyllis Schlafly to the current, like Ayanna Pressley, whatever.
Right.
And so they were all portraits, they were all designed, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people in the mayor's office tried to stop it. I said, that's political malpractice. You want to stop featuring 100 black women in Grove Hall? Like, do you realize how idiotic that is?
You know, I'm going to give you some more time to talk about that. Go ahead and talk about that.
No, because I'm just saying.
Like, now you got my attention.
No, because just showed me the complete disconnect between Black Lives Matter and speeches and stuff. Yeah. And we're trying to so you think about all the black women in the history of Boston.
Right.
College presidents, famous physicians, civil rights workers, elected officials, on and on and on. And you want to say no to that?
Wow. Is that the event I went to that you had?
When I was flipping up the guests.
Okay, I was working as the senior advisor for City Council at Large, Julia Mejia, and the campaign manager said, well, Ron, we want you to go to this event at Franklin Park, the Gorillas. I said, the Gorillas? You know, that I didn't know about I never heard. What's it called again? The Gorilla?
No, so
the Gorilla Exhibit.
Well, we were in it's called the Tropical Rainforest.
Well, she said Gorilla Exhibit, and when she said Gorilla Exhibit, it had to be, and it was a white woman. I got offended by that. I said gorilla, and I've never heard of a Gorilla Exhibit. But it's the tropical, which is gorilla, whatever gorilla is in there.
Gorillas are in there.
Yeah. So anyway, but it's a nice place, and that's where Pastor Wall received the award for outstanding.
Yes.
What was it
for? Economic development, contribution to economic development.
Okay, so he received the award for contribution for economic development. Here we are trying to economic develop a station, and you're sitting here and you're on the board of the Cummings Foundation. I'm not going to ask you for a handout, and I'm not going to even ask you for a check. I'm going to ask you to partner with us as we talk about the equity, as we talk about economic opportunities, because there will be broadcasters that from our community that we will employ. We will hire them to broadcast news throughout the world. Educational opportunities. We'll talk about civic engagement. We'll talk about mental health. All these different things. Business opportunities. Grove Hall, Main Street. Can have a station. You like to talk. I mean, you have an audience that can reach other people. So we have a station over there. I mean, a space over there for a station. I will show you afterwards because it's so exciting. I'm excited about it. My energy kind of went towards the election, but I'm putting my energy back here because it's so important that we disseminate the news. And I always tell this story about a white kid that was pointing at me, right? And I was in Milton, and he was just like pointing, and I was like, Dad, what's going on? He was talking to his mother, and I was like, Dad, you know, I'm a black man, and in this moment, the pandemic and all this stuff going on, I went up to his mother. I said, everything all right? He said, oh, he just was saying he sees you on TV. And so everyone is watching us. We're able to, the information you shared about Grove Hall, I didn't know all that. I used to live on Grove Hall on Schuyler Street. I mean, it's like.
You and Tito.
Yeah, no, before Tito. Remember, Tito was adopted. I lived in Grove Hall. My family lived in Grove Hall for numerous years as a child going there. So I lived there at times, and I didn't know. And I worked there at the Freedom House, the oldest black organization in Massachusetts, right? Is that what it is? Crawford.
I support all those.
Yeah, Freedom House, and now they've moved across the street. Dunk the Vote actually worked out of there, and I'm sitting here looking at you when you said the Sloan School. We are expanding nationally with Dunk the Vote. We've announced Arkansas. We have a brother by the name Dr. Christopher Jones from MIT. He's going to be our manager out there. We're expanding to North Carolina. A friend of mine, Simeon Fraser, his son is the late Simeon Fraser, who used to work for me at the Tobin. His son is the basketball coach for Stephen Curry's traveling men's basketball team, and he's going to be running one in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a battleground state. And I have a cousin who's in the PR business. He's a senior correspondent out of Ohio. He's going to be doing media, and of course my sister, who's an actress in California, is going to help us, bring it to some of the artists. She's an actress in California. Tell your friends to help support Boston Black News. So we're looking to expand our message as far as civic engagement, because a prophet's not honoring his own home. So I'm going to go to these other cities where black folks support other black people, and I'll come back here with some cheddar, and then they'll understand that, then you get some attention. But I think
I'm in that category.
But you're all right. That's where we're going to hang together. But the woman who did the expansion, Shanga it's hard to pronounce her last name. Kawamba. She's a member of Greater Love Tabernacle, with church I came out of, with Bishop William Dickinson. She did our national.
With him on things too.
Okay, yeah, good. We're gonna all come together, black men in particular, right? She did the national expansion for us. That she did it in the year 2004. So I've been wanting to take this nationally for the last 16 years. You know what I mean? So I'm starting to see the dream come to fruition, and we're raising resources to do that, to be able to expand. And so, but I do understand the importance of, and in Haywood Fennell always tell me, right, I know about the political clout, but you got to get the economic empowerment, the economic clout, the economic power. And I understand that, but I can't do everything. But if we have one person do the civic engaged political activity, which I pretty okay in, you know, then we have someone like you with the economic empowerment and, you know, the Connection Cities Foundation, you know, the resources, and then we have somebody else with the media. I mean, bringing it all together. You have Bishop Dickinson and other clergy, you know, bringing all these different sectors together to really accomplish one goal, which is to change things for black people. There you have it, Boston Black News. I'm here with Ed Gasken. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to give you the final words, Ed, to our community, and then I'm going to end this broadcast a little earlier, because I want to talk to a friend of mine who's waiting patiently, who did our Dunk the Vote theme song, Larry Wu. I want to talk to him. If I have a little time, I'm going to see if I can get him in here, and y'all can have a few words. I haven't seen Larry in a little while. You want to give the final words?
Yeah, so a lot of people remember when the SBA did the PPP program, and the federal government's response was approximately about $6 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 6 trillion, just in case you weren't paying attention, not billion, 6 trillion.
I get it. I know about the trillions and the billions. That's why I got you in there. And we're going to end this early. We're going to make sure this happens.
So the issue is, because a lot of people are trying to ask, why is it that the stock market is at the all-time high when everybody else is having an economic depression?
Uh-huh.
And so one of the things that we did when they first made that money available is that people like Glenn Lloyd, Malia, whatever, got together, and there was 40 organizations, and we basically came together to make it possible for small business to actually get part of that money.
Right.
And it was very successful. I think we might have ended up processing like 900 applications at the end of the day.
Right.
And 5 banks that was part of the program.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it was eye-opening. And this is my message to the community.
Mm-hmm.
At first, the first round, none of the businesses were able to get their applications processed by the banks, because the banks didn't care about them, didn't want them too small, too much of a hassle.
Right.
But when the 40 of us came together, we were able to make something happen.
Right.
And I said to myself, why did we not do this before? And so I said, when we came together, we had people who had technical expertise, language expertise, the finance, tax accounting, all the stuff that we needed to actually make the program work.
Right.
And so that's when the light bulb went off. I said, why did we never come together before? Because if we can do it here, we can do it in other areas. And I guess that's my last pitch. Man,
we really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna end this broadcast a little bit earlier. We're gonna start to play our little music so that we can just come on out and then get into that back room, because I want to show Ed this space because it's so important. Coming up to in our next broadcast, Tracy Lithcup with Boston Black News. Thank you, Ed, for coming on. I really appreciate you, man. See you next Friday at 8 a.m. Boston Black News.